This episode is sponsored by Archaeologist Tours. Want to dig deeper into Mexico's indigenous past and present? Allow Archaeologist Tours to customize your Yucatan adventure. Archaeologist works hand in hand with local indigenous guides to provide a tour that is entertaining, educational, and beneficial to the local community. For an adventure like no other, check out archaeogato.com. That's ARKEOGATO.com. Or just follow the link in the show notes. Now, on with the show.
You must excuse me. I've grown quite weary.
This hasn't been easy, I know. But you've learned a lesson. A lesson in honesty. Honesty to yourself and honesty to others. That lesson will stand you in good stead all your life.
I think we've all learned a good lesson. I've always heard that honesty is the best policy. Now I'm catching on to why that's so, to why that's so, to why that's so, to why that's so.
Greetings, dear listeners, and welcome to Tales from Aztlantis, where we take you on a journey through Chicano, Mexicano, and Mesoamerican history and archaeology, and we help combat the spread of disinformation about these very topics. We are your hosts, Kurly Tlapoyawa.
And Ruben Arellano Tlacatecat.
What is going on, my brother?
Just celebrating the season. It's a wonderful time of the year.
It's been wild. And you know what? I have a story to tell.
Oh,
that,
no. What?
I don't think
I know we're going to share stories.
Well,
I didn't bring one.
Well, maybe mine will be big enough for the both of us.
All right.
I don't know if I've shared this with you before, but so I, like many a young lad, grew up without knowing anything about my biological father. I didn't even know his name until very recently. One of my uncles sent me a letter, this being one of my mom's brothers, sent me this letter. And it's like this really nice 4-page long letter. And he's just talking to me, but he ends it with P.S. Your real dad's name is Ramon Carrera. And I'm like, I never even knew that. I never knew the guy's name. And so I poke around online and I can't really find out anything related to that name from like Pueblo, Colorado, or, where I was born or any of that. So one day, and this is just, man, I'm telling you straight up, like this is like 4 weeks ago. I'm out in the field and I get a ding on my phone. And it's one of those moments where you get service for a little bit. So your phone like blows up with a bunch of messages at the same time.
Right.
Because we don't really get service where I'm working. And so I pull out my phone and it says, has messaged you on ancestry.com. And I was like, no way. And so then of course I lose signal immediately.
Yeah.
So there's nothing I can do. I can't look up the account, see what the message is or anything. So I work and, I've been working like an hour or two out of town, so I'm able to drive back home at night. And I get home and I jump on the computer, and sure enough, I got this message. And so I respond to her, and I'm like, "Hey," because she's like, "Hey, we matched on Ancestry, like really, really close. It says we're closer than like first cousins." And I'm like, "Well, are you related to Ramon Carrera by any chance?" She's like, "Yeah, that's my dad." So
what?
Yeah. And
holy smokes.
Right. And I'm still like kind of processing all of this. And so like video messages me, like video chats, and we like talk for like 2 hours. And it turns out that our shared biological father was deported like 30 years ago. And he's still alive, and he lives in Chihuahua. Like he's from Chihuahua.
Whoa!
And
that's crazy.
This is nuts, right?
Wow!
So that's been just kind of rattling around in my brain for a while, and I haven't told too many people about it. But yeah, I wanted to share that with you because it's been weird processing it. You know what I mean?
I bet. Wow. So you're connecting with your sister, and are you going to try to connect with your biological father at some point, or?
You know what? Yeah, it's one of those questions, right? Like I want to know certain things. But honestly, what's really motivating me right now is I kind of want to get dual citizenship. And I spoke to some friends who've done it, and apparently, like if I could get his birth certificate or something from him, then the process isn't that difficult. So, yeah, thinking of getting Mexican citizenship.
Wow. Okay. Yeah, there's a lot of people that I've been talking to are having the same thought about maybe getting dual citizenship because, yeah, things are kind of uncertain at the moment.
Yeah.
But at the same time, word on the street is that old MAGA Cheeks here is thinking about maybe sending special forces into Mexico, or
to
even
deal with the
bombing
narcos.
the cartels because he's the savior of America, or for some reason, or he believes himself to be. And so the question has come up on the Discord channel by some of our supporters and members asking the question about what to do in those kinds of situations. What's Claudia Scheinbaum's response? I mean, she's been responding kind of, she's trying to be diplomatic about it, right? I mean, she has said a few forceful things, countering some of the statements that Trump has said, but when push comes to shove, right? And I was thinking about this too. I didn't post it on the Discord, but I was thinking, this is a provocation, like it starts with these kinds of threats and, antagonisms. And it reminds me of what happened back in the U.S.-Mexico War of 1846, 1848, because, at the time, we had manifest destiny going on in this country. You had a significant amount of people at the time who had bought into this notion that the continent was supposed to be theirs through divine, providence from sea to sea. And it just so happened to be that not only were, Native Americans from the continental U.S. in the way, but also those pesky Mexicans, those quote unquote mongrel peoples from Mexico and from that part, from Latin America, who were also in the way of this dream, this fever dream that a lot of people have.
As we are wont to do.
Exactly.
We're always getting in the way.
Always getting in the way. And so it starts with Texas, right? Texas. When I teach this part of the history and the first half of American history, I tell students there's just no, and I think I might have said this before on the podcast, there's no way to really tell the story of just at least the 19th century America without telling the story of Texas Revolution and its independence and how that leads into the U.S.-Mexico War, which basically not only dismembers Mexico, right? The northern half of Mexico basically goes to the U.S., but it's also part of the story of Western expansion. And it's also the story of the Civil War, because one of the things that triggers the Civil War is the debate over whether or not slavery is going to be allowed in the Western territories. As the nation is expanding, as more states are being carved out of those territories, that's a big debate. You have the Missouri Compromise, and then, you have a lot of rhetoric, a lot of people pushing for the expansion of slavery. And even way before the U.S.-Mexico War, like you had people already saying, hey, we probably should just go ahead and invade Mexico. There was this whole invade Mexico movement that was also kind of in place. and it picks up steam during the Texas War for Independence, and then after that, it just kind of snowballs, and it leads directly into the Civil War because you have those debates about slavery, about expansionism, and then one of the things also with Southerners is that the U.S.-Mexico War, besides the war for American independence and the War of 1812. The U.S.-Mexico War was basically the first major international war that the U.S. had, that had nothing to do with England, right? It was Mexico. It was its first major war, and a lot of the people that end up on both sides, on the North and the South, that end up, being on the Union side or the Confederate side, cut their teeth in that war, in the U.S.-Mexico War. So the U.S.-Mexico War was kind of like a proving ground for the Civil War. And so now fast forward, now we are again kind of in this moment, right? Like
everything old is new again.
Almost, not quite, but almost 200 years, right? Later on, It's like, here we go again. Here we go again. So I don't know. I mean, I'm not an alarmist. I don't want to be an alarmist, but as a historian, I do find a lot of parallels, and it's interesting just to, because, one of the things that I like to say is that, there's that old saying, the cliche that, if you don't know your history, you're doomed to repeat it. But, Mark Twain, I think he's the one that's credited for saying that history doesn't repeat itself, but it rhymes. And this is definitely a rhyme. This is definitely a rhyme.
Yeah. This country is spitting bars right now, as the kids like to say.
Check 1 2. Check 1 2.
Well, in the spirit of saviors, since you mentioned a savior of the United States, as he likes to think of himself, I think we're going to delve into a little bit of history today that maybe a lot of Chicanos and Mexicanos are aware of, but maybe they don't know the particulars of the story. So, dear listeners, it's that time of year again, when the mainstream media and their corporate overlords conspire to wage war on the winter holiday meant to celebrate the birth of our Savior and erase our annual traditions. I'm referring, of course, to the birth of Witzilopochtli, our son reborn, and the associated feast of Panketzaliztli. But fear not, dear listeners, because here in Aztlantis, we proudly say, Merry Panketzaliztli. We're bringing it back. Merry Panketzaliztli, my friend.
So is it ho, 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 or what would it be instead of ho, ho, ho?
That's a good question. But this is the time where we honor Witzilopochtli as the reason for the season. Now, for the uninitiated, you may ask yourself, what is this feast of Panketzaliztli, and what is this story about the birth of Witzilopochtli? Well, dear listener, I'm glad you asked, because for this episode, we're going to delve into the reason for the season. The Feast of Panketzaliztli, or the Raising of the Banners, is the 12th month of the ancestral Mexica calendar. And yeah, before all the haters pipe in, I know they're not called months, but for the sake of simplicity, I'm going to refer to it as a month. It is marked by the celebration of the winter solstice and the birth of the new sun as Huitzilopochtli, the hummingbird on the left, one of the principal teteo honored by the Mexica, the other being Tlaloc. Traditionally, Panketzaliztli was celebrated with dance, feasting, music, and a foot race. An effigy of Huitzilopochtli was constructed from amaranth flower and agave nectar, and then broken apart and eaten after the race. Tamales were also made and eaten, and mock battles in honor of Huitzilopochtli were waged between students of the rival Telpochcalis, or boys' schools. Households were decorated with paper banners, and small fires fueled by ocote burned throughout the celebration, providing a signal to the returning sun. During the entire 20 days, gratitude was shown towards all the trees and plants that provided fruit, grain, herbs, firewood, etc., and they were adorned with decorations in the form of painted banners fabricated from strips of papel de amate, or bark paper. The story of Huitzilopochtli's birth can be found in chapter 1 of book 3 of the Florentine Codex. And so I thought it would be cool and fun to tell this story, to read the story as it was written by our ancestors, because I know a lot of people are aware of, the basic idea or the story of the birth, but I thought it would be really cool to actually crack open the Florentine Codex and read it as it was written. The story goes as follows.
We'll be back after a quick break.
This episode of Tales from Aztlantis is brought to you by Aztlantis Premium. Don't you just hate having your favorite podcast interrupted by ads like this? Well, dear listener, you're in luck. Because starting at just $3 a month, you can support independent Chicano media and receive ad-free episodes, premium episodes, bonus content, and access to our Discord server. Just visit talesfromaztlantis.com and click Go Premium, or follow the link in the show notes. And now, on with the show.
The Mexica greatly revered Huitzilopochtli. They knew his origin, his beginning. His beginning was in this manner. In Coatepec, on the way to Tula, there dwelt a woman by the name of Coatlicue. She was mother of the Tzentzontli, the 400 Teteo of the south, and their sister, who was known by the name Coyolxauhqui. In this, Coatlicue did penance there. She swept. It was her task to sweep. Thus, she did penance in Coatepec, the mountain of the serpent. And one day, when Coatlicue was sweeping, there fell on her some plumage, a ball of fine feathers. Immediately, Coatlicue picked them up and put them in her bosom. When she finished sweeping, she looked for the feathers she had put in her bosom, but she found nothing there. At that moment, Coatlicue was with child.
The 400 Teteo of the south, seeing that their mother was with child, were very annoyed and said, "Who has done this to you? Who has made you with child? This insults us, dishonors us." And their sister, Coyolxauhqui, said to them, "My brothers, she has dishonored us. We must kill our mother, the wicked woman who is now with child. Who gave her what she carries in her womb?" When Coatlicue heard of this, she was very frightened. She was very sad. But her son, Huitzilopochtli, in her womb, comforted her and said to her, "Do not be afraid. I know what I must do." Coatlicue, having heard the words of her son, was consoled. Her heart was quiet. She felt at peace. But meanwhile, the 400 Teteo of the south came together to make a decision. And together they decided to kill their mother because she had disgraced them. They were very angry. They were very agitated, as if the heart had gone out of them. Coyolxauhqui incited them. She inflamed the anger of her brothers so that they should kill her mother. And the 400 Teteo made ready. They attired themselves as for war, and those Tzentzontli were like captains. They twisted and bound up their hair as warriors arrange their long hair.
But one of them, called Cuauhtlcac, broke his word. What the 400 said, he went immediately to tell. He went and revealed it to Huitzilopochtli. And Huitzilopochtli replied to him, "Take care, be watchful, my uncle, for I know well what I must do." And when finally they came to an agreement, the 400 gods were determined to to do away with their mother. Then they began to prepare, Coyolxauhqui directing them. They were very robust, well-equipped, adorned as for war. They distributed among themselves their paper garb, their anecuyot, or the girdle, the nettles, the streamers of colored paper. They tied little bells on the calves of their legs, the bells called oyowali. Their arrows had barbed points. Then they began to move. They went in order, in line, in orderly squadrons. Coyolxauhqui led them. But Cuauhtliccac went immediately up unto the mountain, so as to speak from there to Witzilopochtli. He said to him, "Now they are coming." Witzilopochtli replied to him, "Look carefully which way they are coming." Then Cuauhtliccac said, "Now they are coming through Tzompantitlan." And again Witzilopochtli said to him, "Where are they coming now?" Cuauhtliccac replied to him, "Now they are coming through Coacalpan." And once more Witzilopochtli asked Cuauhtliccac, "Look carefully which way they are coming." Immediately Cuauhtliccac answered him, "Now they are coming up the side of the mountain." And yet again Witzilopochtli said to him, "Look carefully which way they are coming." Then Cuauhtliccac said to him, "Now they are on top of the mountain. They are here. Coyolxauhqui is leading them."
At that moment, Witzilopochtli was born. He put on his gear, his shield of eagle feathers, his darts, his blue dart thrower. He painted his face with diagonal stripes in the color called child's paint. On his head, he arranged fine plumage. He put on his earplugs, and on his left foot, which was withered, he wore a sandal covered with feathers, and his legs and his arms were painted blue. And the so-called Tochancalqui set fire to the serpent of candlewood, the one called Xucoatl, that obeyed Huitzilopochtli. With the serpent of fire, he struck Coyolxauhqui. He cut off her head and left it lying there on the slope of Coatepetl. The body of Coyolxauhqui went rolling down the hill. It fell to pieces. In different places fell her hands, her legs, her body. Then Huitzilopochtli was proud. He pursued the Tsentzonhuitznawa. He chased them off, drove them off, the top of Coatepetl, the mountain of the snake. And when he followed them down to the foot of the mountain, he pursued them. He chased them like rabbits all around the mountain. He made them run around it 4 times. In vain, they tried to rally against him. In vain, they turned to attack him, rattling their bells and clashing their shields. Nothing could they do. Nothing could they gain. With nothing could they defend themselves. Huitzilopochtli chased them. He drove them away. He humbled them. He destroyed them. He annihilated them.
Even then he did not leave them, but continued to pursue them. And they begged him repeatedly. They said to him, "It is enough." But Huitzilopochtli was not satisfied. With force he pushed against them. He pursued them. Only a very few were able to escape him, escape from his reach. They went toward the south. And because they went toward the south, they are called gods of the south. And then Huitzilopochtli had killed them when he had given vent to his wrath. He stripped off their gear, their ornaments, their anecuyot. He put them on. He took possession of them. He introduced them into his destiny. He made them his own insignia. And this Huitzilopochtli, as they say, was a prodigy, because only from fine plumage, which fell into the womb of his mother Coatlicue, was he conceived. He never had any father. The Mexica venerated him. They made sacrifices to him, honored and served him. And Huitzilopochtli rewarded those who did this. And his cult came from there, from Coatepec, the mountain of the serpent. and it was practiced from this most ancient times.
That's such a cool story.
It is.
That's a badass story. The scholarly consensus is that this story represents the birth of Huitzilopochtli as the new sun of the winter solstice. He does battle with the Tzentzonhuitznawa, the 400 Teteo of the south, scattering them across the sky as he defeats them, and thus turning them into the stars. And the disarticulation of his sister Coyolxauhqui's body represents the different phases of the moon. Offerings are made to Huitzilopochtli at this time of year so that he can travel back across the sky with renewed strength. And I really like the way that the story kind of builds the tension with the little, like the spy, one of the Tzentzonhuitznawa, who's like, oh, I know what's going to happen. And so he's telling him, like, they're coming. And Huitzilopochtli's having him, give him exact locations of where they're coming from. I don't know, man. This would be a pretty cool movie.
I know. I'm curious as to when no one's made it.
Yeah. I mean, maybe in Mexico there's like an animated clip or something, but not like as a full.
But something like, big, something with a lot of production and a lot of like money behind it.
Mm-hmm.
Like, what's his name? Del Toro?
Yeah. Guillermo del Toro.
Guillermo del Toro, right? Like he's always doing all this cool stuff, but it's never really a Mexican stuff, right? Like,
right. Like a lot of Spanish stuff. A lot of stuff like with the Spanish.
It's very
Civil
European centric, right? Like, dude, it's cool. I like it. I love it. But I mean, come on, man. Like, there's a lot of stories in Mexico you can tell, brother.
Exactly. So, as far as the festivals and festivities of Panketzaliztli, we can continue these traditions to this day, right now, through dance, through song, through feasting. We can make our own representations of Huitzilopochtli from amaranth, and we can light the way for the sun's return with bonfires of ocote. In fact, here in New Mexico, this tradition is maintained to this day through the lighting of luminarias and farolitos, although admittedly, this is done through a colonial Catholic lens. One of my favorite parts of the traditional celebration of the birth of Huitzilopochtli and of Panketzaliztli is the ritual burning of the xucoatl following a foot race. So basically they have this, they build this effigy or a xiptla of Huitzilopochtli out of amaranth. And supposedly it was massive. And they would have this foot race, the people who could get to it first. And after the race, there was this ritual of where they took this, reproduction of the xucoatl and they like danced with it and paraded it through the streets. And in my imagination, I could kind of picture like the Chinese dragons.
I know. I was thinking the same thing.
Being carried around. Yeah.
Right.
Paraded through the streets with drumming and singing. And then as part of that ritual, they burn the xucoatl. They set it on fire. The Florentine Codex describes this particular part of the feast, and it sounds pretty amazing.
We'll be back after a quick break.
Have you picked up your Mexica calendar for the year 12 Flint? Or how about a paperback copy of The Four Disagreements? Just visit talesfromaztlantis.com for all the latest merchandise and show some love for your favorite podcast. That's talesfromaztlantis.com for all the latest merchandise. Now, back to the show.
Thereupon likewise descended the fire serpent. It was just like a blazing pine firebrand. Its tongue was made of flaming red feathers. It went as if burning like a torch, and its tail was of paper, perhaps 2 fathoms or 3 fathoms long. As it came down, it was like a real serpent. It showed its tongue. It was as if it bent back and forth. And then the priest had brought it to the base of the temple. He proceeded carefully there to the eagle vessel. Then he went up to the eagle vessel. Also, he raised the fire serpent in dedication to the four directions. When he had so raised it in dedication, then he cast it upon the sacrificial papers. Then they burned. And when he had come to leave it, when he went ascending to the top, then shelled trumpets were blown.
And that comes to us from the Florentine Codex, Book 2, Chapter 34, page 147, if you want to look it up yourself.
You know, it kind of reminds me, it's reminiscent of this celebration that they do in New Mexico. Don't they burn like some big effigy of some sort in New Mexico? Do you know what it's called? I've heard it.
Yeah, the Zozobra.
There you go, the Zozobra. So I'm sure there's not really a direct connection to it, but it's very reminiscent of that in a way.
Yeah. What I like about that, so it's like this burning of old man gloom, right, is what they call it, the Zozobra. Yeah. And what the Chicano community has done here in sort of like response to the burning of Zozobra, because the Zozobra has its origins are with like these Anglo artists who got together and they were like, oh, we're going to create this, this great festivity here in New Mexico in Santa Fe. And we're going to, and, allegedly they came up with the idea sitting at a coffee shop or a bar or something. And they sketched it all out. And, one of their artist friends built the first representation of it.
Right.
So what the Chicano community here has done in response or reaction to this is we have the burning of the cucuy. And in the South Valley, which is where most of the Chicanos live, in one of the parks, they build a giant effigy of the cucuy. And the kids, they invite all the kids, all the raza come out, and they have the kids write their fears down on paper, and they stuff the cucuy with their fears.
So it's like a big piñata that's stuffed with the fears of the children.
Yes. And then there's danza and music, and they set the
when does this happen?
Fire. It's in the fall.
It's in the fall, okay.
So in my house, we do our own version of the ritual of the burning of the shukoat by creating a small shukoat out of amate paper. And basically I just draw one out and color it. I'd have Quetz or somebody color it. I'll probably have my granddaughter color it this year. And, we have our dinner and then we burn it. We burn our shukoat. We burn it in our fireplace. And I'll usually sing some songs while we're burning it. So there are many ways that we as Chicanos can celebrate Panketzaliztli. New traditions that could be invented or built upon older traditions, right?
Revitalized, maybe?
Revitalized, that's the word that I'm looking for. And the important thing is that we just don't let these traditions fade away, that we maintain them somehow, in my opinion.
Right.
So with that, dear listeners, we say happy Panketzaliztli, and may your winter be filled with food, family, and friends.
Right on. You know what I like about this? It kind of reminds me at the start where you're describing the ceremony or the feast or the ritual, where they discuss or they mention that there's like some kind of like wrestling match that takes place. Is that right? Is that correct? Or
so it's like a mock battle.
Mock battle. That's what it was.
Yeah.
And so it kind of reminds me of like Festivus, what's the testing of the feats of strength.
The feats of strength.
Yeah. Then the airing of the grievances.
I have a lot of problems with you people.
I'm like, I wonder. Someone was reading the Florentine Codex.
Yeah. And it's cool to like elaborate our own versions of these festivities. And I mention that because there's an artist online. He's on Instagram. He calls himself Mi Corazón Mexica.
Yeah, I like his stuff.
Really, really good.
Yeah.
Painter, right?
Right.
And he actually provided the cover art for this episode.
Oh,
so
nice.
I wanted
Shout
to give
out
him,
to him.
give him a shout out. And one thing that he's really good at, like, even though he and I use different counts, like the calendar, he has developed like these really, really cool ways of sort of articulating modern versions of the ceremonies, of the monthly ceremonies. So shout out to him, and Blaskamati for hooking us up with the artwork for this episode.
So speaking of ceremonies, so Coatlicue is mentioned in this story, right? And without trying to make a parallel or insinuate that there's a connection, I mean, it is kind of coincidental that this story is about Witzilopochtli and the winter solstice, and it happens to fall around the same time as the current colonialist veneration of the Virgin Mary, the Guadalupe, right? And how she's conflated with Coatlicue a lot.
Yeah.
When in fact, that we've been saying, so I don't know if we want to say this or now or just kind of briefly touch on it, but maybe I'm thinking we need to like save it for its own episode. But going back to what we've been saying, right, that the Teteo who were venerated at Tepeyac were Chicomecoat and Cihuacoat. And apparently, and I need to follow up on this because it's only one source, and I don't have a reason to doubt it, but I just haven't had time to really follow up on their sources. But this source that I found recently is saying that Cihuacoat and Coatlicue are kind of two sides of the same Teteo. One represents life, one represents death. And that if that's true, then that means that in a way, the Tonantzin that was being referred to early on, because eventually over time, Tonantzin now means the Virgen, but originally it did not. And that's what people missed. They missed that whole point. That originally our ancestors, when they went to Tepeyac, to the chapel, and when they revered and venerated and did rituals to Tonantzin, the image of the Virgen was incidental. They were really doing it to Cihuacoat, and by extension, if it's true that Cihuacoat's opposite is Coatlicue, then yes, they were also doing it to Coatlicue.
Yeah, that'd be interesting. I hadn't heard that. So
that's I think that's the merits its own episode. I just wanted to toss that in here because it comes up, and I'm sure someone might have the question or might make the comment, well, actually, right? So I'm going to signpost that here. So letting our listeners know that we will come back to this. But yeah, I just wanted to point that out.
So stay tuned, dear listeners. So yeah, man. I really, this is like my favorite time of the year. Like I like the cold weather. I like snow. Growing up in Southern Colorado, I've always enjoyed the winter time and the time spent with family and just the food, the inevitable food, the tamales and the pozole and everything else that comes along with it.
Right.
And just spending time with family and friends. So, I hope this episode gives some of our people a way to enjoy this time of year without it being so Catholic centered and Christian centered,
or New Agey too, because oftentimes, like when we talk about like the winter solstice, it's been so infused with New Agey stuff that it almost feels kind of weird sometimes. That's why I don't even like promote it that much. Like for instance, like on my social media posts, like I just talk about it's Witzilopochtli's night, and like very minimally will I say winter solstice because I don't want it to be associated with New Age.
Yeah, it carries stuff, baggage with it now, unfortunately.
Exactly. And so I'll try to be careful to distinguish between what the New Age people are doing and what we're doing, right? Or at least what we're trying to do. Like in your family and my family with venerating, just the natural phenomena that is the winter solstice. Right? I mean, that's what the story is basically explaining. I remember many, many, many years ago, back in the old MES days when we had the discussion board. I don't know if someone had posted something that they found on the website that was criticizing something we did or something that we said in regards to Witzilopochtli and the story of how, he dismembers Coyolxauhqui, and the people who were critical of what we were saying were basically making a feminist argument, saying that the story only sort of supports the notion that Mexican culture is machista, right? And we're like, but wait a minute, this is before machismo gets even introduced into the culture. That's something that the Spaniards brought with them, right? Because our ancestors were more about, egalitarian society, and the feminine was always revered and given their space and their due, right? And so we were trying to explain to them, like, no, like, you don't understand. The story is not to be taken literal. It's like, it's not about pushing down or oppressing women. It's about Coyolxauhqui representing the moon, Huitzilopochtli representing the sun, and the Huitznaua,
the stars.
The stars. Like, this is just a story explaining a natural phenomenon called the winter solstice.
Yeah.
And they weren't wanting to hear it because, like, they had made up their minds that, because it comes from Mexican culture and it's representing, a woman being beheaded and being oppressed by male, figure. Like, okay, but I would also
like to point out, the point is being missed, but I'd also like to point out that he literally kills 400 of his brothers.
But that's okay because those are just dudes.
Yeah. Well, my friend, I was thinking the other day because I've been thinking about my pops a lot lately because he passed away.
Yeah.
And I remember when you were visiting down in New Mexico. It was during this time of year.
It was.
And
I do remember that.
We were going to light a bonfire for Witzilopochtli.
Right.
So we set up all the wood and everything. And my dad just came out with a bunch of gas.
Right.
And he's like, here, hold on.
Yep.
Oh, Dad.
Cool dude. I'm glad I met him.
One of my favorite memories. He was like, now that's a fire.
That's a fire, yeah. Good memories, man.
Yep. Well, my friend, Mary Panketzaliztli.
Yeah, Mary Panketzaliztli. Exactly. So that's what we're trying to say to our listeners, to each and every one of you out there. Whatever you celebrate, just on our end, just accept this Mary Panketzaliztli as our way of saying to you, happy holidays.
Salud.
Salud. Cheers.
Timoitase. Thank you for listening to Tales from Aztlantis, a project of the Chimali Institute of Mesoamerican Arts. If you enjoy the show, please consider becoming a Patreon supporter. You can do this by visiting talesfromaztlantis.com and clicking Support the Podcast. Your continued support will help keep the podcast ad-free and independent. Until next time, Timoitase.